They say the people closest to you can hurt you the most. I thought my wife might be cheating on me with someone from work, so I turned to the one person I trusted more than anyone, my brother. I asked him to help me find the truth. What I didn't know then was that the truth would destroy 3 lives, starting with mine. You don't ever see the moment it happens, the betrayal. You just feel it. Like a shift in the atmosphere. A look that lingers a second too long. A laugh that doesn't reach the eyes anymore. For me, it began with her eyes. Melissa had this spark. Mischievous, a little wild. It's what drew me in 8 years ago. But recently, her eyes felt detached. Like she was present, but already somewhere else. Not angry. Not sad. Just absent. At first, I chalked it up to work. She's in hospital administration. Long hours. Late nights. Constant pressure. I respected that. I gave her space. But space is a funny thing. It can either help you breathe or let someone else move in. She started dressing different for work. New perfume. Fresh lipstick for the night shift. Showers as soon as she got home. She claimed it was to wash off the hospital, but my gut said otherwise. Still, I said nothing. Until I found the receipt. It was tucked into her coat pocket. An expensive dinner for 2 at a restaurant we'd never been to together. The date? A night she said she was working late. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. That's when I called my older brother, Marcus. Now, Marcus is reliable. Calm. He's been married to Alyssa for 12 years. 2 kids. Mortgage. Golden retriever. The whole package. He was the best man at my wedding. My closest confidant. The guy who helped me pick the ring for Melissa. So when I told him my suspicions, he didn't hesitate. You think she's around with someone from work? He asked, not even trying to soften the words. Maybe. There's this guy she keeps mentioning, Chris, from finance. I've never met him, but she laughs when she talks about him. Want me to look into it? What, like follow her? Marcus chuckled. Not unless you want me arrested. But I've got a guy who does background checks. Private stuff. Discreet. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I need to know. He clapped me on the back. We'll figure this out. Just don't do anything stupid. And just like that, the investigation began. Over the next week, I played the part of the clueless husband. Melissa came home late twice. One night, she came back with her hair wet, said it rained. There hadn't been a cloud in the sky. I pretended to believe her. Meanwhile, Marcus kept me updated. Nothing concrete yet, he said, voice low over the phone. But if she's slipping, we'll catch it. The second shift in the air came the following Friday. I was at home, waiting for Melissa. She was out celebrating a colleague's promotion. I tried not to spiral, but when midnight came and went with no call, I gave in and checked her location. She'd turned off her tracking. That was a first. The next morning, she claimed her phone died. I stayed at Olivia's, she said casually, referring to her coworker. Too much wine. You know how it gets. I didn't know. I didn't even remember the last time she had too much wine with me. Still, I nodded. That night, I checked her phone while she showered. Nothing. No texts. No suspicious messages. Clean. Too clean. She'd either deleted everything, or she was using another number. Then it happened. At 1:13 a.m., I got a message from an unknown number. You're looking in the wrong direction. It's not who you think. Ask your brother what he does when you're not around. I froze. I read it 3 times. Ask my brother? It had to be some sick prank. Some troll who got wind of our situation. But then I remembered Marcus had been oddly invested. And always vague. No updates. Just still checking. And a week ago, he canceled our usual Sunday night dinner. Alyssa's not feeling well, he said. But Alyssa had posted photos from a winery that afternoon. Alone. I didn't know what to believe. But I knew one thing. The game had changed. After that anonymous message, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Melissa, watching her chest rise and fall, her arm draped across my stomach like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't pulling my world apart piece by piece. She stirred once and whispered, "You're tense tonight." "Just work," I lied. That morning, I drove to work but ended up parking in an empty lot and sitting there for 2 hours. I couldn't shake the text. Ask your brother what he does when you're not around. It could have meant anything. Could have been a friend with me. Or someone Melissa worked with, trying to deflect suspicion. Hell, maybe even Chris, the guy I thought she was cheating with, trying to stir the pot. But then came the second message. It came in around 10:34 p.m. while Melissa was in the shower. No words this time. Just a photo. Blurry, like it had been taken quickly. 2 bodies tangled in white sheets. Her face was visible, resting on someone's chest, eyes closed. Her arm draped across a man's bare torso. Her wedding ring was off. I zoomed in, hands trembling, while rising in my throat. The man's face was mostly turned away, but part of his shoulder was visible. A birthmark, faint, round, just below the collarbone. I knew that mark. I'd seen it 100 times growing up. My brother had the same one. My mouth went dry. My brain started racing. Was it him? Or was I just losing my grip on reality? Could it be a trick of the light, an angle, a setup? I responded to the number. Me. Who is this? Unknown. You already know. You just don't want to believe it. Me. If this is real, prove it. Unknown. You'll have your proof soon. Just watch. What the hell was I watching? The next day, I couldn't focus. I tried to work, to distract myself with numbers and property listings, but everything felt dull and distant. That evening, Melissa claimed she had another shift. I'm covering for Olivia. Her kid's sick. I nodded, kissed her goodbye. Then I followed her. She drove to a residential street on the other side of town. Parked. Walked half a block. Entered a house. Not the hospital. Not Olivia's. A single light was on upstairs. I waited in my car, heart pounding, palms slick with sweat. 45 minutes passed. Then, headlights pulled up behind me. I looked in the rearview mirror and felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. Marcus. He got out of the car with a gym bag over his shoulder. Walked up to the same house. Used a key. Went inside. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded to the earth. I stayed parked across the street, engine off, heart caving in on itself. I wanted to storm in. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, a mistake, a cruel prank. But I couldn't unsee the way she touched him. Through the window, behind those half-closed curtains, I saw her silhouette. Her hands on his shoulders. Her lips on his neck. She wasn't with a colleague. She was with my brother. There's a silence that comes with betrayal. Not rage. Not screaming. Just silence. The kind that drowns you in your own heartbeat. I sat across the street from the house where my wife and my brother were each other in secret. My brother. My own blood. I stared through the windshield for 2 hours, engine off, eyes fixed on the flickering bedroom light behind the curtain. At some point, the silhouette of a woman appeared, Melissa, in a white robe, laughing, walking barefoot across the room. Then another figure. Marcus. Shirtless. Comfortable. Smug. I raised my phone and started recording. I didn't zoom in, didn't try to catch anything graphic. I didn't need to. The footage was damning enough. The timestamp, the house, their bodies, together. I watched her crawl into his lap and kiss him like she was starving. I watched my brother wrap his arms around her waist like he owned her. I felt nothing. Not yet. When they disappeared behind the curtain, I didn't move. I sat there, motionless, until the bedroom light finally clicked off. Then I drove. No music. No words. Just the white-hot sound of my own breath. By the time I got home, I had a plan. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I made coffee. Let her kiss my cheek. I smiled. Didn't you say Olivia's kid had the flu? I asked casually. She blinked. Yeah, her thing. I had to stay the whole night. Hospital life, I said. You're a saint. She smiled, genuinely. Like she believed the lie was working. Later that day, I met with someone I hadn't seen in years, my old college roommate, Drew. Drew's a tech guy. Now owns a cybersecurity firm. Back in the day, he could hack a phone faster than you could unlock it with a passcode. You still as sneaky as you used to be? I asked. He raised an eyebrow. Why? I need a favor. I need access to a phone. Legally. Or not. I handed him Melissa's old phone. One she'd stopped using but hadn't wiped. She doesn't remember it still backs up to the cloud, I added. Drew grinned. Give me a few hours. When he called me back that night, his voice had dropped. Dan, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see it for yourself. There were hundreds of messages. Most of them encrypted or deleted, but not all. Not the ones she forgot were still backed up. Photos. Videos. Voice notes. Conversations. With Marcus. Melissa, last night was insane. I can't stop thinking about the way you grabbed me when Dan was gone. Felt like high school again. Marcus, he's so blind. I almost feel bad. Almost. Melissa, don't. I don't want to lie anymore. I want you. Marcus, he's not ready to know yet. Let me handle him. Let me handle him. Like I was some pawn. A disposable inconvenience in their twisted game. I clenched my fists so tight I thought my bones might snap. Drew looked at me and asked quietly, "What are you going to do?" I smiled. "Set the trap." The next weekend, I invited Marcus over for poker night. Just the two of us. Whiskey. Cards. Old school bonding like we used to do. I kept it friendly. I even made steaks. He didn't suspect a thing. Halfway through the second drink, I leaned back and said, "Hey, you ever been to that place on Whitmore Street? Quiet little townhouse. White drapes. Red door." He blinked. "What?" "I think someone I know lives there. Maybe you've been." He stiffened. Just slightly. But enough. I dropped my phone on the table and pressed play. The video. The one from outside the townhouse. His expression didn't change at first, but the blood drained from his face. And then came the whisper. "You followed me." I stood slowly. "You betrayed me. Dan, shut your mouth." He tried to speak, but I stepped forward and slammed the phone against the table so hard the glass cracked. "You were supposed to help me," I said, my voice low and calm. "I came to you as my brother. And the whole time, you were, what? Playing both sides? You're not just a liar, Marcus. You're a coward. And you don't get to walk away from this untouched." I didn't hit him. I didn't scream. That would have been too easy. I just looked him in the eye and said, "The next time I see you near my wife or my house, you won't see me coming." Then I walked away. She must have sensed something. Melissa was already on edge when I got home that night after confronting Marcus. The lights were dimmed. A candle flickered on the dining table, casting long shadows. She'd cooked my favorite, chicken piccata. There was even wine. That's what guilt looks like in heels and lipstick. "Everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head just enough to feign innocence. "Great," I said. "You?" She smiled. Nervously. "You seem tense." I sat across from her. "You know, I talked to Marcus today." The smile faltered. Just a flicker. "Oh, how's he doing?" "You'd know better than I would." She blinked, then froze, then tried to smile again. "What are you talking about?" I slid the phone across the table. Same video. Same timestamp. No words, just truth. Melissa watched it. Slowly. And when her eyes met mine again, something inside her shifted. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Something darker. "You were spying on me," she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "And you used that trust to crawl into bed with my brother. It's not what you think." "Really?" I asked, leaning forward. "Because it looks exactly like what I think." She stood up suddenly, hands clenched at her sides, pacing the kitchen like a storm about to erupt. "You were never there. Always working, always stressed, always tired. I needed something real. Someone who saw me. Someone like Marcus." She didn't answer. Then the hysteria came. She started crying, but it wasn't grief. It was rage mixed with fear. A spoiled child who realized her toys were being taken away. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she shouted. "It just did. One night became two. And then, God, Dan, I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to get caught," I said. She tried the waterworks again, sitting across from me, tears streaming, hands clutching mine. "We can fix this. Please. I love you." I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. "You knew enough to delete messages. To lie about Olivia. To hide the other phone. That shut her up." Then came the lies. The desperate spin. "He took advantage of me, Dan. Marcus started it. I didn't even want it at first, but he kept texting, kept pushing. He's your brother. You know how persuasive he can be." I stared at her. "You said you wanted someone real. And now he forced you." She blinked, caught in her own mess. And then she flipped again, just like that. From tears to fury. "You think you're so perfect? You're cold, Dan. Emotionally unavailable. You don't even touch me anymore. You push me into this." There it was. The blame game. Even now, she couldn't own her choices. I stood, walked into our bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out the suitcase I'd packed the night before. Documents, clothes, everything I needed. When I came back out, she stared at the bag. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice breaking. "To a place where the floor isn't rotting under me." "You're really doing this?" "No, Melissa," I said calmly. "You did this." As I reached the door, she shouted after me. "If you leave now, we're done forever." I turned back one last time. "We've been done. You were just too busy, my brother, to notice." I left her standing there, barefoot, furious, tears smearing her makeup, rage twisting her face. I thought walking out would be the climax, the final blow that ended everything. It wasn't. Turns out, When you take everything away from someone like Melissa, control, comfort, the ability to lie and get away with it, she doesn't crumble. She combusts. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I stayed with an old army buddy just outside the city. He gave me space, kept the fridge stocked, and didn't ask questions. But on the 5th day, the storm hit. My phone started blowing up. Texts, missed calls, emails, even voicemails from people I hadn't heard from in years. Friends, family, co-workers. The narrative Melissa had crafted was spreading like a virus. Melissa's version? I'd abandoned her. No explanation. No warning. She painted me as a cold, distant husband who'd emotionally neglected her for years. Marcus? Oh, he was just comforting a friend. A shoulder to cry on. Nothing ever happened between them. And the kicker? She said I was having an affair with my secretary. That I was the one who stepped out first. That my guilt made me paranoid, and I projected that paranoia onto her. That I left because I couldn't handle being a real husband. She even told her parents I emotionally manipulated her. The gaslighting was Olympic level. I sat there, stunned, listening to a voicemail from my aunt, a woman who once hugged me like a son, asking if what Melissa said was true. I laughed, out loud. The kind of bitter, hollow laugh that comes when someone kicks you after you've already hit the ground. Melissa wasn't trying to survive the wreckage. She was trying to bury the truth under it. So I stopped playing defense. I reached out to my lawyer, a brutal woman named Carol with a mind like a scalpel and the soul of a war general. After I showed her the video, the messages, the photos, she looked up and said, "We don't play fair, Dan. We play smart. Let her dig her grave. We'll bring the cameras." We filed for divorce that same week. Grounds, adultery. We included the footage, the metadata, the GPS history, even screen-recorded cloud backups. She could cry to her friends all she wanted. Judges don't buy tears. They read evidence. And then I made a phone call of my own. To her father. He picked up gruffly. "Daniel, where the hell have you been?" I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply said, "Sir, I respect you. So I wanted you to see this before she spins it." I sent him the video. And then the screenshots. And the hotel receipt. It was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. "She told us none of that. She told you I left her. That I was unfaithful." Another pause. Then, she said it was emotional, not physical. That Marcus was just a friend. I could hear the shame bleeding into his words. I said one last thing before I hung up. "You raised a daughter who became a master manipulator. And your son-in-law was just another piece in her game." He didn't argue. Melissa called me that night. 5 times. On the 6th try, I picked up. "Dan, you don't have to do this," she said, her voice shaking. "We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll tell the truth." "Why now?" I asked. "Because you got caught." "I was scared," she said. "I didn't know how to stop. I didn't mean to fall in love with him." I didn't respond. She continued. "I just wanted to feel alive again. You used to make me feel that way. But then life got dull." Dull. That was the word she used to describe our marriage. 8 years. Loyalty. Support. A home. Vows. Dreams. Memories. Dull. "I hope he was worth it," I said flatly. She sniffled. "Dan, please. What can I do to fix this?" "You can sign the papers." "Dan." Click. She didn't sign the divorce papers. Carol sent them. Twice. Certified mail. No response. Then we had them delivered in person. Melissa opened the envelope, slammed the door in the server's face, and tossed the documents in the trash. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted control. And when she realized I wasn't coming back, when she saw I'd stopped replying to her texts, stopped reacting to the emotional bait she dangled, she did what manipulators always do when they lose power. She made herself the victim again. This time, legally. A week later, I got a call from HR. "Dan, we need to speak with you." Privately. I went in thinking it was something work-related, maybe just fallout from the divorce going public. Instead, I was handed a letter, a formal complaint, filed by Melissa, alleging harassment, emotional abuse, retaliation. She claimed I'd threatened her safety, that I was intimidating her, and creating an environment of fear. She wrote that I'd sent disturbing messages and had shown up at her workplace unannounced. All lies. All calculated. My jaw clenched as I read it. Line after line, she painted herself as the one who needed protection. Not once did she mention the affair. Not once did she acknowledge the truth. She wanted to ruin me. My boss looked uncomfortable. We have to investigate. It's protocol. I nodded. Let me guess, she didn't mention the adultery. Or that the man she slept with was my brother. Silence. I handed over my phone. The screenshots. The evidence. I explained everything calmly, factually, no emotion, just proof. They reviewed it. Their expressions changed. The complaint was dropped the next day. But the damage? It lingered. I called Carol again. She's trying to provoke you, she said. Classic scorched earth tactic. You've taken back your power, so now she's trying to destroy anything she can still touch. Then it's time to finish this. She's got no job left, no narrative left. She's unraveling. Good. That Friday, she sent another text. Melissa, you ruined me. I hope you're happy. Melissa, Marcus isn't even talking to me anymore. Melissa, I made a mistake. I don't want him. I want you. Melissa, please. Can we just talk? I didn't reply, but I did forward every message to Carol. And the next day, we filed a restraining order. Not out of fear, but to set the final boundary. On paper. In court. Real. She showed up at my apartment the next night. Banged on the door. Crying. Screaming. He used me, Dan. Marcus never loved me. He stopped returning my calls. He just wanted to win. I'm the one who lost everything. I didn't open the door. I let her spiral, let her rant to the doorframe. Then the police arrived. Calm. Professional. Not the first domestic dispute they'd seen. They gave her two choices. Leave or be arrested. She left. Swearing. Crying. Cursing Marcus. Cursing me. Cursing herself. I stood there, staring through the peephole, watching her drive away in the car I'd made the last payment on. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something real. Freedom. Not the angry kind. Not revenge. Just a quiet, sobering release. Like I'd finally set fire to a house that had already rotted from the inside. She was gone. And she was never coming back. If you've ever watched a liar scramble, you know what desperation looks like. It's not loud. It's calculated. It hides behind half apologies and well-rehearsed charm. I'm not a bad guy grin. The let me explain lean in. Marcus was all of that. After Melissa spiraled and disappeared from my life, things went quiet for about a month. I focused on work, rebuilt my routines, even went a few days without thinking about either of them. Then my sister-in-law, Alyssa, called. I need to see you. It's important. We met at a coffee shop near her office. Her eyes were swollen. Makeup couldn't hide that. He finally told me, she said, voice shaking. I didn't speak. Just waited. About Melissa. About what happened. He told me you left her and that she seduced him. That he was drunk. That he didn't know what he was doing. I almost laughed. But there was nothing funny about it. He's painting himself as the victim, I said. Classic. She nodded. He said you turned her against him first. That you were emotionally abusive. That you pushed her away and she latched onto him for support. Support. He even said you fabricated the whole cheating thing to get revenge. I leaned back, looked her dead in the eye. Alyssa, do you want to know what he didn't tell you? She hesitated. So I showed her. The video. The texts. The Google timeline. The screenshots of her husband telling my wife exactly how much he loved sneaking around behind both our backs. Alyssa's hands trembled. When it ended, she didn't speak. Just whispered, I think I'm going to be sick. She left without finishing her drink. 3 days later, Marcus called me. Voicemail. Short. Condescending. You didn't have to involve her, Dan. You already blew up my life. You made your point. Just walk away like a man. I saved the message. Forwarded it to Carol. Then I called a friend of mine in local media. A guy I helped with a zoning dispute 2 years ago. I sent him the full story. Redacted. No names. Just the timeline. The betrayal. The fallout. He called it a hell of a human interest piece. I want the truth out there, I said. People should know what a man like that looks like when the lights go out. A week later, the article dropped. Brother's betrayal. When family becomes the knife in your back. The byline was anonymous. But the story was unmistakable. It trended on local forums. People speculated. People whispered. Marcus knew. He had to know. He posted a photo on Facebook the next day, smiling at some networking event, all buttoned up and professional. Caption read, even through storms, stay strong. Never let haters define your truth. The comments section turned on him within 24 hours. A former co-worker replied, didn't you have an affair with your brother's wife? Someone else. The truth always catches up. His account went dark the next day. Later that week, I heard from Melissa again. Just wanted to say thank you, she said, for not letting him bury the truth. You deserve better, I said. We both did. She paused. I kicked him out. There was one more thing I hadn't done yet. The final nail. A video. Compiled. Clean. With timestamps, dates, and a narrative. Not out of spite. Out of closure. I uploaded it privately. Sent it only to those who needed to know. The family, close friends, the few people who'd heard Melissa's lies and believed them. I didn't have to scream. The truth did the screaming for me. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after destruction. You sit in the ashes. You breathe. You take stock. You convince yourself the worst is behind you. But sometimes the final blow isn't loud. It's quiet. Hidden. Waiting. And when it lands, it doesn't hurt like fire. It freezes you. Because you realize you never really saw the whole picture. I'd kept Melissa's old phone locked in a drawer. The one she forgot was still backing up to the cloud. The one Drew had pulled messages from. At the time, I only needed the smoking gun. The proof of the affair. The betrayal. But now, months later, something made me plug it in again. Call it instinct. Call it unfinished business. Either way, I wasn't ready for what I found. I scrolled through old deleted files, buried deep in the cache. Photos. Notes. Audio messages. And then I saw it. A video. Dated 2 weeks before I confronted Marcus. The thumbnail showed Melissa. Dressed for work. Holding her phone at arm's length. Talking into the camera like she was journaling. I hit play. Melissa on screen. Okay, so I talked to Marcia and Gail again. And we're moving forward with the plan. She giggled. Like a schoolgirl telling a secret. I'm going to get Dan drunk at the company dinner. Not like blackout, but enough that he won't know what's going on. Then Marcus and I can finally have a night together without sneaking around. She paused, adjusted the angle, then whispered. He's going to be so confused. I'll just tell him he passed out early. He'll never know. I froze. There was more. Melissa. I mean, I don't even feel bad. It's just one night. After everything I've put up with, I deserve something for me. She smiled at the camera. Self-satisfied. Cruel. Then she ended the recording. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just cheating. It was premeditated. They planned to drug me. To use me as an excuse. And worse? They were laughing about it. I forwarded the video to Carol. Her response came in seconds. This changes everything. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was criminal. We met with a private investigator the next day. A former detective who specialized in covert evidence recovery and digital forensics. He scrubbed Melissa's devices. Dug into her backups. Uncovered conversations I hadn't seen before, chats with coworkers, even messages to Marcus where she bragged about how easy I was to fool. One message in particular stood out. Melissa to Marcus. Once we have what we want, I'll tell Dan it was a mistake. But until then, just smile and let him believe he's the good guy. She didn't just betray me. She orchestrated it. Lied. Manipulated. Set the stage. It wasn't about love. Or boredom. Or drifting apart. It was about control. About playing the role of the devoted wife while feeding off the thrill of deception. So I made another video. This one wasn't for court. Or friends. Or family. It was for me. I sat down in front of the camera and spoke plainly. I laid it all out. How she changed. How the affair unfolded. How I turned to my brother for help and he became the blade. And then I said the one thing I needed to say more than anything else. I forgive myself. For loving the wrong woman. For trusting the wrong brother. And for staying blind longer than I should have. Then I turned off the camera. And started packing. I left the city on a gray Saturday morning. Overcast skies. Light rain. The kind of weather that doesn't mourn, just nods quietly as you drive away. No dramatic goodbyes. No luggage full of broken memories. Just a few boxes, my truck, and a rented cabin about 2 hours upstate. The first night there, I slept. Actually slept. No gnawing dread. No phantom footsteps down the hall. No dreams of her voice in the next room, whispering someone else's name. Just silence. And the wind. In the mornings, I ran along the lake. In the afternoons, I read books I hadn't touched in years. At night, I wrote. Nothing special. Just scraps. Reflections. A man untangling himself from everything he used to be. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was distance. And that was a start. 3 weeks into this new quiet, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Dan. The voice was soft, hesitant, familiar. Alyssa. Yes. A long pause. I hope this isn't out of line. I sat down. No. It's okay. I'm listening. I just thought you should know. Marcus. He's in the hospital. I didn't respond. He drank too much. Hit a tree. He's okay, but it's bad. Still, I said nothing. Then she added, he was screaming your name when they found him. Said he'd ruined everything. Said he couldn't fix it. A cold wind slid through the cabin window. I finally said, that sounds like something he should have thought about months ago. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Alyssa said quickly. I haven't. I'm divorcing him. I just thought. You deserve to know. I closed my eyes. Thank you. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the clouds drift over the lake. I thought about all of it. Melissa, laughing into a phone she'd later lie about. Marcus, making jokes while shoving a knife between my ribs. The silence at the dinner table. The betrayal between the lines. The twisted confidence they had that I'd never see it. They'd thought I'd break. But I didn't. They did. I thought that was the end of it. But the next day, I got an email. From a woman named Kelsey. Subject line. You don't know me, but I think we share a story. She introduced herself as Marcus's ex from before Alyssa. They'd been together in college. She found me through a mutual acquaintance after hearing about the article. She said she wasn't surprised by any of it. And then she dropped a bomb. He did this to me too. Not with my sister, but with my best friend. He always plays the long game. Makes you trust him. Then takes what matters most just to see if he can. I stared at the screen. It wasn't just betrayal. It was pattern. Marcus was never my brother. He was a predator in a familiar face. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and smiled. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I had everything I needed for what came next. Justice wasn't over. It was just getting precise. I don't believe in karma. Karma waits. Karma balances. I'm not that patient. The final stage of this wasn't about making them suffer. They were already doing that just fine on their own. Marcus, divorced, disgraced, hospitalized. Melissa, isolated, unemployed, ghosted by the same people who once laughed at my expense. No, this was about truth. And truth needs an audience. After Kelsey emailed me, I reached out to her. We talked for over an hour, two strangers who'd been burned by the same flame. She told me Marcus had always been careful, strategic, the kind of man who never got caught because he made you feel crazy for suspecting anything. But eventually, patterns repeat. She'd been afraid to tell her story. No longer. So we made a plan. Together. It started with an anonymous blog post, his story from her side. Not mine. Not Melissa's. Not even Alyssa's. Just a quiet, precise, brutal recounting of the man behind the charm. It gained traction. Then I shared my video, the one I made alone in the cabin, the one where I said the things I'd never said out loud. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The internet connected the dots. Screenshots began surfacing. Messages Melissa thought she'd deleted. Photos Marcus had sent to more than one woman. Dates. Overlaps. Lies. He wasn't a predator. He was sloppy. And for the first time, the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. Melissa tried to post a defense. One of those long, breathless, narcissistic essays about mistakes and growth, and how people don't understand the pressure of a modern woman. She was eaten alive. Not by me. By everyone who'd once believed her. No one does public humiliation like someone trying to spin a story they don't control anymore. Marcus disappeared from social media. His LinkedIn went blank. Rumors circulated that he moved states, changed jobs, changed names. Didn't matter. The truth follows you, even when you run. Me? I rebuilt. I sold the house. Donated the furniture. Burned the mattress. The past doesn't deserve a shrine. I found a new city. A job that doesn't feel like slow death. A routine that's mine again. I don't flinch when someone says her name anymore. I don't wake up expecting to be lied to. I don't look at my phone waiting for the next knife. And maybe that's the most dangerous thing I ever did to them. I healed. Because when they fell, I didn't catch them. I watched. And then I turned around and walked into a life they'll never see. So if you're reading this, if you're where I was, keep your eyes open. Ask the questions. Get the proof. And when you're ready, don't burn down the house for revenge. Build a better one next door. Then leave the door open just wide enough for them to see what they lost.